Let's try another word problem or riddle together. Bob has 2 weekend jobs. Last weekend he made a total of $77 after working as a cashier for 5 hours and delivering newspapers for 4 hours. This weekend he made $78 working at his cashier job for 6 hours and delivering newspapers for 3 hours. How much does he get paid per hour at each job? Okay, so our first step is to define our variables. What are we trying to figure out? Well, we're kind of already given that information in this scenario, but we don't have variables picked out. So let's go ahead and pick out a variable. So we know that we are trying to figure out how much does Bob get paid per hour working as a cashier. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that's X. X stands for price paid per hour as a cashier. We're also trying to figure out the amount he's paid per hour delivering newspapers. So let's go ahead and just say Y. Y stands for price paid per hour delivering newspapers. Okay, so now we know what our variables are and what we're trying to solve for. Now we can write an equation. So this one's a little tricky. You're probably wondering, where do you begin? Because we're only talking about Bob, but Bob has 2 different jobs, and it's looking like he is given 2 scenarios. So let's write an equation for each of those scenarios. I'm going to take that first sentence about how he made a total of 77 after working as a cashier for 5 hours and delivering a newspaper for 4 hours. Let's take that situation and put it into one equation. So he spent 5 hours as a cashier, and we have the price paid for cashier as X, so that would be 5 times X, plus that same weekend he also delivered newspapers for 4 hours. So this would be 4 times Y, because again, Y stands for the price he gets paid per hour delivering the papers, and we know he spent 4 hours. And we know on that particular weekend, he made a total of $77. So that's where the equals 77 comes from. Now let's look at the other weekend or the other scenario that they give us. This weekend, he made a total of $78 working at his cashier job for 6 hours and delivering newspapers for 3 hours. Okay, so once again, we know that he did both jobs this weekend. He spent, he spent 6 hours delivering papers, so that's going to be 6 times Y, and he also spent, 6 hours as a cashier, not 6 hours delivering newspapers, so that's 6X, plus 3 hours delivering newspapers. So notice I had to go back and reread that a couple times to make sure I was reading it correctly and multiplying the correct number by the correct variable. It is okay if you have to reread it. Okay, so that's going to equal 78 because that's the total amount of money he got paid this weekend. So now we need to determine the most efficient method and solve the systems. So once again, since both of my equations are written in standard form, in my brain it makes the most sense to go ahead and solve once again using elimination. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the equations, one on top of the other. So this first one is 5x plus 4y is equal to 77. The second equation was 6x plus 3y is equal to 78. Now, if I try to combine those 2 equations right now, nothing will cancel out. I need either the x's to cancel out or I need the y's to cancel out. It doesn't matter which one. I like to deal with smaller numbers if at all possible. So I'm thinking of a common multiple that both 4 and 3 will go into. And I know that they both go into 12. So I'm going to go ahead now and multiply this entire top fraction by 3 and this entire bottom fraction, I said fraction. this top equation and this bottom equation. I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by -4. The reason I chose 3 and -4 is because I know that that's going to give me a positive 12y in the top equation and a negative 12y in the bottom equation, so that when I combine them together, the y's will be eliminated. So let's do that. But remember, if you multiply an equation by a factor, you have to multiply everything inside, every term in that equation by that number. So I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So 3 times 5x would be 15x. 3 times 4y is 12y. 3 times 77 is, I have to use my calculator because I can't do that in my head. I get 231. And now I'm going to multiply everything in the second equation by -4. -4 times 6x is -24x. And -4 times 3y would be -12y. Oops, I just realized I left out the y there. And then lastly, 78 times -4 is -312. So now my equations are set up in a way that when I combine them or when I add them together, the y's are going to cancel out. I'm going to just draw a little slash through that. 15x plus -24x is -9x. I'm going to start over up to the top here because I'm running out of space. -9x. Remember, the y's canceled out, and then I've got to do 231 minus 312, and I got -81. Last step, divide both sides by -9, and I get x is equal to 9. Okay, I'm trying to remember what am I even solving. I'm trying to figure out how much does Bob get paid per hour as a cashier and per hour as a newspaper delivery boy. This would be the price for his cashier job. But now I need to go ahead and figure out his newspaper delivery as well. So I'm going to take this value for 9 and I'm going to plug it back into one of the equations. I'm going to go ahead and use that top equation. 5 times 9 plus 4y equals 77. That's 45 plus 4y equals 77. I'm going to subtract both sides by 45. 45 minus 45 is canceled out. Whoops. And 77 minus 45 is 32. So then I'm left with 4y equals 32. Lastly, I divide both sides by 4, and I get y is equal to 8 because 32 divided by 4 is 8. So I believe right now, without checking my work, that Bob is paid $9 per hour as a cashier, and Bob is paid $8 per hour delivering newspapers. But I always feel a little uncertain until I check. So I'm changing ink colors here. So since I used my first equation to help me solve for y, I'm going to use my second equation to check my work. So 6 times x, which is 6 times 9, plus 3 times y, or 3 times 8, is hopefully going to equal 78 if I did everything correctly. 6 times 9 is 54 plus 24. And the good news is that 54 plus 24 is also equal to 78. So it checks. So my very last step would be to go back and answer the original question and make sure you include units. So this is already kind of typed out for us here, but if you're writing it in your notes, you would want to make sure you wrote his price paid per hour as a cashier would be $9. And Bob's price paid per hour for delivering newspapers would be $8.